Hey everyone, welcome to A Little Bit of Woo. I'm your host, Jill Thomas. I'm so excited to have my good friend, astrologer Jackleen Holton. She's an intuitive astrologer. She does have a website and a Patreon channel, so you can absolutely join her little tribe. Today, we're going to be talking about the energy of the election, kind of what's going to happen before, what's going to happen during, and unfortunately, what's happening after as well. And we are all I'm actually surprised at how much even the mainstream media is talking about expecting not to have a result that night, expecting there to be maybe even some post election possible conflict between the parties. It's interesting to see even mainstream media talking about that. So I'm excited to have Jackleen on to talk about it from an astrological intuitive perspective. So welcome, Jackleen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I want to talk about the election with the caveat that the best predictor of elections that I know is the late great Victoria Bearden, who was my mentor and continues to kind of mentor me from the beyond. As I kind of go back, I look at her analysis of previous elections and learn tremendously from that. So I am, as far as an astrologer, I've only been studying it for 40 some years. So, and there's just so much. But so I guess I can start with my intuition. It took me a while to actually look at charts of this election because I don't know, PTSD or something. But when I looked at it intuitively, what I felt was just the energy. I don't know if you remember when we did that. Maybe it was the first podcast I did with you, or one of the first ones, where we talked about the Super Bowl, and you said, "Oh, who's going to win the Super Bowl?" It was a few days before the Super Bowl, and I said, "Well, the energy is definitely with the Chiefs, right?" So I would predict a Chiefs win based on the energy. I would predict a Kamala Harris win based on the energy, that I felt all along, almost since she got in the race. So that's where I am intuitively, and just to see all the ways that their campaign is really reaching out to different demographics and how they're being so wise about their media. And so
It's interesting. It feels really similar to you guys remember, the Obama campaign that had a very different vibe than the other camp. I don't even remember who's running against. Oh, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Wasn't one of the
okay, I
Bushes?
want to talk about that.
Okay.
Because I actually have a story about that. He was
So?
running against John McCain. I was
Oh,
at
yeah.
2008, or I don't know. I think that was the first run, right? And my friend and I were going to watch the election results, and we had a bunch of alcohol and a bunch of wine, snacks, and everything. We were like hunkered down, and we're on that first drink when it was called for Obama. And that's kind of the feelings I was getting about this intuitively, about this race. So
Interesting.
until last week, I didn't want to look at the astrology. I'm sure, just to be upfront, I am not a Trump supporter. We've both mentioned
I think
before
that's been pretty clear
our
that
own,
either one of us.
our own. We all have our own biases, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and so there's something we want to be true, and I have been wrong before because I have my own biases, right? I had looked at, just for my Patreon people, as I was shortly after my mentor's death, Victoria's death, I was saying, okay, let me see if I can take up the mantle for her and look at some races. And there was this one race that I was really invested in, and I got it wrong because I looked too far, too deep, trying to find something to make it work. So I'll say we all have our human biases.
I
But
100%. And I love what you just said, because I have to admit something that you guys who watch my channel know I got wrong. Which is that I said that I didn't think it was going to be that I didn't think Trump was going to make it to the end. And there were two almost lead poisonings later. He's still here, and I think he's going to make it to the end.
you
But
do think now, okay, I was going to
I
ask you
didn't think
about
that. I didn't think he was going to make it to the end, because I definitely saw him, really sick. He is very sick. I think he's very sick. I think that. Uh,
here's something. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
but I think it's only 2 weeks away. I think there's pretty much no chance that he won't make
Okay,
it to the end now. But
okay. So I was
I
going to
have to
ask
walk
you
that
about
one
that.
back a little bit, because
Then
I'm like,
I'm going to make a really bold statement here. There is
okay,
no
go for that.
universe in which Trump will be the president for more than a month. Okay.
Okay.
So there is no universe that, even if he does win, they're ready. The Heritage Foundation, JD Vance, they are ready to step in there. He's clearly in cognitive decline. I don't think there's any arguing that anymore. I don't, maybe we have some
I
very,
agree.
very strong
Agree.
Trump supporters that would argue that, but I really do. If anyone has had a parent with Alzheimer's, sadly, or dementia, sundowning, you can see what happens at some of these rallies. That sundowning is definitely happening here. So he is cognitively addled, and that's not ageism, that's not ableism, that's just what we can see with our own eyes.
It sure appears. I mean, either, full disclosure, neither one of us are doctors, so we can't just. But it does appear that way. I agree with you. I had a grandparent who had it, and it did the same kind of glitchy things that we've
Yeah.
seen him do. That are just. It's hard to
Well,
describe as just.
it's gonna get worse
Yeah.
in the next 2 weeks. It's just gonna get. Well, you think
Interesting. Okay.
with the Arnold Palmer comments that we'd hit a
That
low?
was kind of funny, though. I'm sorry. That was kind of funny. Wait, what happened? When did a presidential election become around eating dogs and cats and measuring some guy's junk? I just.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's a lack of control there. That's what's happening.
Impulse control. Yeah.
And that's just one of the symptoms. It's pretty clear to see. So yes, that's going to get worse. The violent rhetoric, unfortunately, the kind of racist comments and things like that, it's going to get worse. I'm just going to say that between now and the election. So then I started to look at the charts. Okay, I'll look at these charts here. And, looking at their two charts together on election day, it does tighten the race up significantly. And if that's that could be a lot of things. It can be the influence of the Electoral College, which kind of filters votes. It's an old system that makes sure that the popular vote, doesn't always win. And it's basically a slavery-based institution.
I know. Yeah.
Meant to keep systems in place. And so we do have the votes being filtered through this electoral system, so that could even things up a little bit more. We do have quite a bit of disinformation. We have a lot of meddling by folks such as Elon Musk that could sway things. You ask in your little questionnaire, is it going to go as far as the Supreme Court? Well, I hope not. I hope that we don't have another election decided by the Supreme Court, because we have a very corrupt and one-sided Supreme Court. Just gonna state a fact there. But
I was kind of feeling like it might end up going to the Supreme Court, but I also wasn't seeing them doing the wrong thing, because I do feel like there may be a legacy that they want to protect. Some of them, at least. All it takes is a majority. But because they see that their champion is on decline, and do they want to be hooked up and have their legacy be attached to that? But I could be wrong on that one. I'm not getting a real firm on that, but I'm with you. I am seeing her as president. I was seeing her as president, and again, I do have that same bias, but the energy is very different than that last election. I thought it was going to be Hillary for sure too. But the energy is very different, more like the Obama energy.
Is very different than the 2016 election. I didn't make a prediction, and actually that's where Victoria was wrong, and she admits that she was wrong in that case, because who saw that coming, right?
That was
really
shocking.
Wanted to see that coming, but yeah, I would say that this one, it does tighten up when I look at the charts. Both have a lot of Jupiter energy. Now, Jupiter is all good things. It's luck. It's just who's the sun shining on, who's Jupiter favoring. They're both somewhat equal in that. I might give a little bit of edge to Trump, actually, in the Jupiter department, but he's been very Jupiter blessed over the years. Now, Jupiter, also the other side of Jupiter, and when I write my newsletters, I talk about this frequently, that you can't have a bad connection with Jupiter. Jupiter can't do you wrong unless there is excess, extremism, greed, unfortunately. So we will see if those Jupiter chickens kind of come home to roost, or if the Jupiter kind of gives him further ammunition. There are definitely going to be election challenges. There are definitely going to be legal maneuvering on both sides. Harris has a very strong legal team, that things are being set up right now for legal challenges from the Trump campaign. So the thing that Elon Musk is doing by getting people, questionably legal thing that he's doing, getting people to sign petitions that they're going to vote for Trump, that's just to use as evidence later that, hey, look, all these people signed. Well, yeah, you gave them, I think they gave them like $47 or something like that, and with a chance of winning $1 million, right? So, someone might need that money and say, hey, I can say that. So there's shenanigans going on in that respect. There will be some post-election challenges. Having said that, and I looked at January 6th, because we talked about January 6th. When we talk about January 6th in the future, we're not going to be talking about this January 6th. I'm not, not to say that there couldn't be some lone wolf stuff, but there's not going to be, I don't think, a big organized January 6th.
Do you think that's possible partly because they came down so hard on them last time?
I think so. And also, I don't feel like Trump is gaining support. I feel like he's losing support, especially with the cognitive decline that's happening. And I also did look at JD Vance's chart, because he could be our president.
That's fair. That is actually very fair.
He will be our president if Trump wins. 100%, right?
100%.
And so I did look at his chart, and he's a Leo sun, which you think charisma, right? And there's a couple different kinds of charisma. There's like in the room charisma, and then there's on TV charisma. He obviously has the in the room charisma, okay, where I listening to his wife talk about him, and friends, people that know him talk about him, they really do see him as a charismatic person, people who have the same beliefs and that sort of thing. But if you look at the polls right after that vice presidential debate, he went up in the polls, as did Tim Walz, and they sort of met in the middle there. But almost immediately after, he had a sharp decline. So it's a kind of charisma that he has. Let me bring up that chart, that it washes off.
What you're just saying as you pull up the chart, I want to mention something that I observed. Yes. I actually knew somebody who knew Bob Dole. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was terrible. Like, he would do these debates and he sounded like a monster. But like, people that know him said he was funny. He had a lot of charisma, that he was somebody they really liked. And he did this commercial for Viagra just after the election.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It showed he had a real sense of humor, but that did not come out in the election. And I think that to his detriment.
We're dating ourselves saying
I know, is that terrible?
I do remember him in the Viagra commercial and all that. And yes, that's it. JD Vance and Trump are the opposite of each other, right? Trump has this television charisma, right? This big rally crowd.
He really does. No
charisma
question.
That, and if you watch The Apprentice, you have to watch that. Anyway, how he was propped up to be this, this larger than life figure, really. And his personality just went so well with that, right? It did kind of create this larger than life, this very charismatic cult of personality, basically. So he has this extremely wonderful, big charisma in front of people, right? Of course, it's starting to whittle off now with some of this cognitive decline and some of the things that he's saying, and people are leaving the rallies and that sort of thing. But, but one-on-one, you don't get the same energy from him, right? Because people are, there's creepy things that are happening in the one-on-one, right? Yeah. So he and JD Vance have that complementary sort of opposite personas. So one's charismatic in the room, the other's charismatic on the screen. And then I look at Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, they complement each other brilliantly. And I didn't have time to look at all the charts of who she could have chosen, but I really feel like looking at his chart He's an Aries sun. That some people say that Sagittarius is the luckiest sign. I say it's Aries because the Sagittarian sun is shining at a specific angle to him, and I look at him as being sort of the lucky charm for her, being strong in the areas that she's not as strong and vice versa. So it complements each other.
He always just comes off, even when he's being goofy and giving weird answers, he just comes off as very likable. And I think that's the nice compliment with her. And I do see that too. Any sense, okay, so you've looked at those charts.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that says, hey, this person can't be president. Is there in either of those charts?
Okay. Well, they both could win. Yes.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's the question.
Intuitively, like I said, I hate it when, and this doesn't usually happen because when I do a reading for someone, I'm doing the intuition and the astrology at the same time. And so it all jives. But I made the mistake of not doing it all at once and getting those charts out there. And that's why there's a little bit of a differential between what the astrology says and what my intuition says. And so it's really going to come down to whether, how this Jupiter energy works for Trump. He's got some good, like Jupiter trying Jupiter is amazing. So that's like good luck could be bestowed on him election day. And I looked at Inauguration Day and it sort of tightened a little bit more. It's like, okay, what's going on around that point? Again, I don't think we have a January 6th, but do we have some legal maneuvering? The antidote to this is get out the vote, right? I am of the mind, if I have any political beliefs, it's like everyone should vote. Everyone should vote and take 3 people 100%. To vote with you, right? Of like mind or whatever. So the more people who vote, the more we have a democracy. And I really am interested in us keeping the democracy.
I would agree. So was there anything obvious? I don't know how the charts were. Forgive my ignorance of astrology, but was there anything in the charts that screamed long, protracted legal battle?
Not to the extent that it's going to be a thing like in 2000. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's my that. I don't think it's going to get to the Supreme Court. I could be wrong. There could be, in 2020, there was a long protracted legal battle, but it didn't, we all knew where the outcome was. I think this time we know even more. I think that the popular vote differential will be probably even greater than 2020. Like I said, I feel Kamala Harris wins the popular vote by quite a bit.
I was getting something intuitively. I could hear commentators saying it's going to come back to Black women once again, because I seem to recall there were other elections like that where it ended up being Black women in some of these swing states that waited in line for 6 hours to vote that ended up winning the election. And I almost feel like that's going to be the case again. It'll be some group that they weren't expecting, that they're not really polling for. Nobody has those people's phone numbers. And that ends up being how it goes. That's how I was seeing it.
It's always Black women.
Isn't it always Black women?
Yeah, I mean, it is mostly always Black women that swing it for the Democratic candidate.
Interesting. Yeah, a group that's not being likely voters, right? Where do they get these people from? Where do they get the people they're polling from? They have
let's talk about the polls, because
please.
When you are looking at a poll, you want to look at the methodology with which the poll is conducted, right? How many people did they sample? If they sampled 600 people, just throw it out. Okay. Okay. How did they call them? Did they call them on landlines? Did they call them during the dinner hour? I know most of the people I know do not answer their phones. Their cell phones, their landlines, if it's an anonymous number. I know I don't. If I don't know who it is, even if it's like business call, well, I have voicemail, right? They can leave a message if this is a number I don't recognize. So You know,
mine doesn't even ring. I have a business, and you and I both have businesses, and we get a ton of phone calls from Yelp trying to sell us services, especially around the end of the month.
oh God.
So I
Yeah.
don't even answer the phone. I mean, it doesn't. The ringer's turned
Oh,
off.
would you like a business loan? And you know,
it's a very good point. That's a
but I
very
love
good
how
point.
the phones now say spam risk. I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
You don't
Or
even need
scam
to show me
likely.
that call.
Yeah.
That call
So
doesn't even need to appear on my phone.
yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
crazy.
I block. And so, yeah, I'm probably not going to answer and I'm Gen X. I'm not Gen Z. You know, I'm not a millennial, which I think that they're probably even better than us because we did answer back in the day.
We
Our
did.
corded phones, we did it every time it rang. We didn't know who it was, so it's like, is this the person I've been wanting to call me, right? So,
Love it.
you know, my mom and her sister would have this joke where the sister would come in and say, "Put her hand on the phone. Is it hot? Is it hot? Has it been ringing?"
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so these are people that answer their phones, oftentimes landlines during the business hour. Who's that? There's older people, small demographics. A lot of the polls are skewed, you know, toward the Republican demographic, just in
Okay.
general. So you have to look at your poll methodology. And so I think the polls are off. Yes.
I was saying that too, and I was feeling like, you know, they're skewed. You know, like you said, like we said, it always comes down to black women, and the polls are skewed to older white women. You know,
Yeah.
and that's not necessarily how it's not a fair sampling.
And
Is there
also
anything?
non-voters. Think about this.
Oh
There's
yeah, that's true.
people who haven't voted yet are not getting polled for the most part, right? If it's your first time voting, you're probably not getting polled. If you've never voted before, you're probably not getting polled.
Interesting. So last thing I want to talk about before we talk about, you know, tools and coping mechanisms and
Oh yeah, we're going to talk
I didn't get it. What is there anything in the charts that you can see around, because I know even mainstream media is talking about concerns about post-election violence towards Democrats or towards, you know, even the guy who, we talked off air, but the guy who was in the movie Napoleon Dynamite, whose name I cannot remember, has a YouTube channel or Instagram channel, and he was filming one of his little bit videos, and he was wearing a Vote for Pedro t-shirt, and he got attacked outside of a bar in Texas. The whole thing is on video because he was recording an episode. But I'm concerned, and I think a lot of people are concerned about violence after, in that sort of in between period when all of the legal challenges, which we know both sides have already prepared these things, it's just a fill in the blank, you know, submit it when it's done. I think we're going to see legal challenges before the night's even over. Anything in the charts that we should be concerned about, or that sort of echoes, yes, there's going to be some things to look at.
There will be lone wolf things that happen, and there could even be small group, and I'm talking small group, not January 6th size group, right? There could be small group activity, unfortunately. However, where we were in 2020 with the outer planets were in a very difficult configuration. And I actually think, and I've said this before on your show, that the divide is lessening. We're coming into a time where, yeah, there's going to be an opportunity for healing from all this division, all this misinformation, you know, all this kind of family against family sort of rhetoric. And, you know, people who've lost family members may not get them back right away, or may not get that relationship back right away. But it's, you know, there's will be a time of healing. The outer planets are what I look to, you know, when I look at violence, disruption, upheaval. I look at the outer planets, and they are in a much better configuration right now than they have been. Sometimes violence can be caused by the smallest thing, like a sign. I've mentioned this to you before, like a planet moving into a certain sign, like Capricorn or Aries, and then just kind of setting something off. A moon, a lunation, like a full moon being at the exact degree of something else. But I'm not I'm not seeing anything catastrophic. I think, unfortunately, we're going to have a little bit of that, um, lone wolf stuff. We've actually had those couple of assassination attempts, right? That didn't really, that actually turned out to be nothing. Didn't hurt anyone really. I mean, he got his ear grazed,
Yeah, I
but
know. Well, no, and the guy did die at that event, actually.
yes, that's
There was a
right. That
casualty at the event.
that there was a death at that
Very
event.
sad,
And
very sad.
that was sad. That was sad. But it turned out to not be the big assassination. And the other guy was just hiding in the bushes, right?
Yeah, but
So,
hiding with a with
yeah, I
an
get it. I get it.
AR-15.
But I remember when I mentioned last time that those sort of thwarted terrorist attacks,
You
that
did
was
say
what
that.
I was
Yeah,
talking about.
you did say
You
that.
know, unfortunately, we had that in the Middle East, that one that actually did get carried out and a lot of people died. But, we've seen more sort of thwarted plans and
You know what? You did mention that. You did talk about thwarted plans last time, and that is a good point to bring up, because there have, and we've all, fears of this stuff happening in various parts of the world, including the Middle East, and a lot of stuff has been thwarted. A lot of things,
we don't
are
even know about,
we don't
probably
even
what's gonna
know
happen,
about. Thank God. I
right?
mean, I don't know if I could sleep at night if I knew about half the stuff that
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that our soldiers do on our behalf that we don't know about.
Yes.
And so thank you for that.
Mhm.
Um, so if your guy, I would say your guy, it's usually two white guys. So I'm like, if your white guy doesn't win, if your candidate does not win, or if you are, dealing with the stress or emotional of what's going on, because there will be some upheaval and we won't be maybe quite as certain right away. What strategies would you suggest people do to handle this stuff? I know, I'm all about cupcakes, and playing with your dogs and your cats. Uh,
Yes.
Anything you would recommend?
Well, I always come back to meditation and taking those moments to ground yourself, particularly if you're going out among people that you have differences with, right? Here we are approaching Thanksgiving, and we've talked about this topic a lot, right? Because we have family members with different political and religious beliefs. It's kind of we all come together over the table. So yeah, just I would say start now with a grounding meditation and do whatever you can to calm your central nervous system. More important than anything else. If you can have a massage,
Mm,
yeah, play with your
mm.
cats. I always say go out in your yard and put your feet in the dirt and ground yourself, because that's really important right now. There's so much information and disinformation and rhetoric and division flying around in the ethers, right? Why don't we ground ourselves in the earth, do some gardening, do whatever it is that is creative for you right now? I think this is a really good time to just take some time to do that. I would say definitely do what you can to get out the vote, because you want to feel, when this is all over, whatever side you're on, I did what I could do. I did what I could do to create the outcome that I want, that I feel is right for America. That's another thing I did look at. It's another thing. It's like, what did the framers want for America? Now, there's a lot of lenses that we could look at this through, because definitely it was a very patriarchal thing, right? Back in the day, it was all men, it was all white men from England that came over to establish
And
this free
enslaved people was
society.
part of that society too.
Pardon me?
Enslaved people was a part of that
Yeah.
society.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't, but just to look at what America says it wants to be. Whenever I am at my kids' school and they're reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and, we all know that by heart, that's our national prayer for what we want to be: liberty and
Mhm.
justice for all, equality,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so looking at that, the lens of, will election day measure up to what we want, what we say we want as a nation? And there's many indications that it will.
I love that. That's a great way of looking at it. I say I love Pilates. I love a good proper ass kicking on the day.
Okay.
If you go to a Pilates class, get them. I love your massage idea, and I love your standing in the dirt. I would also encourage a proper ass kicking at the gym.
Yeah.
I feel like
Okay.
there's something
Okay.
about being just a little sore, like, I
Yes.
accomplished something today.
Yes.
And I love your idea of what is it that you want to see in the world, you did everything you could. In it also by expressing kindness, by being a good person, by
Yeah,
holding a door open for someone. And I think we can do lots of things that are good for the world in little ways. So I love that.
absolutely.
I
And
love that point.
during my meditation, I do send out love and light. I start with my immediate circle around me, and then I just imagine it in every place I've ever been and every person I've ever had contact with, and then spreading out every person they've had contact with. And pretty soon you're all over the world with your good energy and your good juju.
Oh, I
And
love
we
that.
really need that right now. It's a meditation I do daily that just I send it out first to where I am in this moment, you know, where my kid is, where my husband is, where my family is, but then also around to my neighbors, and then to people I've been thinking about, and then to the larger world, places I've been, and people I've known. And then, just imagine that peace spreading all over where it
Well,
needs.
I love what you're describing, because the act of doing that, of getting in that vibrational frequency and sending it out, changes you while you're
Yes.
doing it.
Yes, absolutely. It relaxes you, and it kind of makes you feel more connected. And that's what we have been lacking, is that feeling of we're all one.
Mm.
It's all one. What part of us is going to win right now? Is it that we are all one, or we are separate? And so I would put energy toward we are all one, and we all really basically want the same things.
I would 100% agree with that. We're not all agree on how we're going to get to those same things, but we all
Yes.
kind of want the same thing. So on that note, I will say, Jackleen, how can people get a hold of you? I will put links in the description. Absolutely. I think everybody should join her Patreon channel, which is, inexpensive. You've priced it so that everyone can afford it. And every month there's these great meditations that we do together, and we magnetize things. And every
Yes.
time
Yeah.
I always
Moon
end up
circle.
getting, I love it. Every time I always end up getting that thing I want, even when it's something
My
ridiculous.
next moon circle will be, I believe it's November 1st.
Mhm.
It is right before the election, and we're
There you
going
go.
to just send out that energy and it's kind of that grounding we need. So,
I love it. I love the idea of connection. I love connecting with people that are not in my general vicinity, because I don't have to live where all my tribe lives. I can live all over. We can all live all over now, so it's wonderful.
yes,
So
yes.
tell us
One
the name of
thing
your
about
website. Oh, go ahead.
my website is JackleenHolton.com. Probably in the
It will
comments.
be in the comments. Yeah.
It's spelled a little, well, you've got it there on the
Oh,
on the
that's right. It's on
screen.
the screen. It is spelled a little
Yeah,
different.
it's spelled a little bit different, but then I see my name on the screen. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So thanks so much, Jackleen. Everybody is, I hope this was helpful. It sounds like it's going to be there's going to be it could be some conflict events, but it's not going to be as bad as it was before, is what I'm hearing from you. And I feel, yeah,
Yeah.
feel a bunch of peace about that.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Jackleen. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Please put a comment, a nice comment, and like I don't want to have to be watching every 45 minutes to clean up all of the anti-Semitic comments. So just don't do that, guys. Come on, whatever. Okay, bye, guys. Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.